Welcome back, Defenders. It's Chris here, your host for today. Welcome to Defenders TV Podcast Episode 60. Here we are, guys. They've given me control once again, so you'll be listening to my dulcet tones for the next couple of seconds. Welcome to Defenders TV Podcast, Episode 60, where today we're looking at Daredevil Season 2, Episode 6, Regrets Only. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
That's enough seconds from you, Chris. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Derek.
There we go, guys. You've given me back control. Every now and again, I like to take control of this garbage truck on fire. Any of you kind of funny fans will enjoy that one.
You know, if we got together more often, all three of us, you'd get every third episode, Chris.
That is
it
true.
wouldn't be as exciting for you. So I like how exciting
we
it is.
try to, but you won't allow us. You want it's Mummy Derek to the garbage crush.
Guys, apparently John's been watching Season 1 again, where we had Wilson Fisk smashing people with doors, and now it's going to be putting Chris and myself into a garbage crush. So that's even weirder. Anyway, let's jump on quickly.
Well, I meant just crushing our dreams of being able to watch all the way through to episode 13.
Derek crushes your dreams.
And also the get together, the hogmanay of podcasts.
Okay.
I think we're just saying random words at the moment. I have no idea what's going on. Chris,
Yes.
save us from this.
So, guys, okay, we have to ask. Regrets Only. Episode 6, what did you think?
I've got loads of regrets.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, wrong podcast. Yeah, different. Again, the pace came down, and I think it really explored the relationships actually here. Without giving too much away as to some of my points, I kind of felt for Foggy a bit in this episode. He felt like he was being undermined left, right, and centre actually by his colleagues. Do you know what I mean? Like it just felt. I kind of felt for Foggy in this episode. Yeah, he's still loyal to a fault. He's willing to go and be. And deal with Frank Castle despite every sort of bone or sinew in his body saying this is going to destroy us, and knowing what Matt went through. So I thought it was an interesting episode actually, just purely from that perspective. And then the other was, I just loved Elektra in this. I thought she was really good fun. I really liked her character in this, the goading of Matt. Again, I'll be giving away too many of my points to really elaborate on it further, but I just really liked Elektra in this. I thought she was good fun.
Yeah, and for me, I really liked Daredevil Goes Bond. It was great. It's great fun seeing Daredevil with a hot woman on his arm, dressed in his tux, and getting the key card and all that kind of stuff. That was quite cool. Seeing a very different side of it. It's almost Daredevil Goes Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Should I say?
I was the same. Taking this episode for me kind of took a well-deserved break from the kind of onslaught that we've seen so far of the action kind of. Aside from the skirmish at the front and the towards the end, besting when kind of Matt and Elektra bested the naughty Yakuza, but we'll get to that. For me, weaved Castle's story back in a nice way, not in a thud, and they're setting up the penalty-seeking, ass-covering Reyes as our big bad, and obviously not our big bad, but one of our big bads.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but as you said, Chris, kind of the big bad for Nelson and Murdoch, as opposed to the supervillain big bad.
Yes, but again, I want to be proven wrong on this. I think that would be cool if they gave her some impenetrable skin, have her marauding through Manhattan, destroying Hell's Kitchen brick by brick. It'd be great.
I think coming into Civil War, I think a diplomat or a public servant is definitely one of the villains of all of the Marvel characters coming into Civil War.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, let's crack on because we've got a lot of points and we all want to tell them. So, Derek, can you please elaborate on who beautifully scripted and directed and produced this episode.
Well, this episode was directed by Andy Goddard. Andy Goddard did about 6 episodes of Miracle Day, Torchwood's one of their big season arc. Excellent stuff.
Yeah, that was cool.
I think he probably got that job because he also did The Next Doctor, the Doctor Who episode with the wonderful David Morrissey, who most people know as the Governor from Walking Dead. So he also directed that episode. And he's also directed 5 episodes of Downton Abbey.
Okay.
for people who have different tastes.
Ooh. The teen crumpets, that's where we got this. This is why it was a black tie.
Gusset's just fallen down.
There you go. And actually, much more importantly, he will also be directing episode 7 of Luke Cage season 1. So our first announced director of Luke Cage, as far as I know.
Oh, my gussets have just fallen down.
on your unbreakable skin.
A few more abs with a chisel and a hammer maybe this time rather than a rotary saw. Be all right.
Maybe.
Or a wrecking ball going straight into it and it's like...
But that's the director, so that's Andy Goddard. So it comes from a very good stock, I suppose, being a Downton Abbey director.
I hasten to add, no relation of Drew Goddard.
No connection at all. Now, Drew Goddard is American and Andy is British, so I'm guessing there's no connection between the two. But
and certainly not an in-law of Stephen DeKnight.
No, certainly not. The episode itself was written by Sneha Kurs, who worked on The Americans for about 13 episodes. A great show, definitely worth checking out. And also did a ton of work on Constantine. She was one of the members of the writer's room for the TV show Constantine, was senior script editor for about 4 episodes and wrote the final episode and I think episode 3, of that season. So has worked in comic books and done a great job over on Constantine, the unfortunately cancelled Constantine.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. We only just talked about that on our Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice podcast, which we did on GothamTVPodcast.com earlier today, which if you're interested, you can find at GothamTVPodcast.com/iTunes. Or any other good podcast catcher.
And on that note, almost like it was a perfect segue, John, can you tell us where people can hear our dulcet sounds every week?
Yeah, of course. It's on DefendersTVPodcast.com/iTunes. And you can review and subscribe to our podcast there. You can also check us out on any other good Sith or Jedi podcast. Just search Defenders TV podcast, such as Stitcher, Player FM, Podcast Addict, or Beyond Pod. Just search for Defenders TV podcast there. And of course, if you have any feedback or comments on this second season of Daredevil, any of the other Marvel Netflix shows that have been or are going to be released, if you've got any thoughts on Finn Jones and his yin and yang balance of the Force with regards to meditating versus martial arts that he seems to be doing at the moment, then you can send them into feedback@DefendersTVPodcast.com, or you can follow us and join our groups on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast.
Hey. John, are you good to give us a synopsis of this episode?
I certainly am. After the Yakuza attack on Nacho's penthouse, a hungry Elektra persuades a reluctant Matt Murdock to continue to help her with her Roxxon dealings on the condition from Matt that she leaves his city for good once her business is complete. At the same time, others in Hell's Kitchen also need persuading. A very, very reluctant Foggy Nelson ultimately agrees to risk the firm and most likely their safety after Matt and Karen Page want to become Frank Castle's defenders. After meeting Castle's hapless public defense attorney appointed by DA Reyes, the advocates at law now more than ever want to ensure that justice is done in the Punisher case. However, Matt's involvement in the case is cut short when Elektra asks him to a party in order to steal a valuable ledger housed on the 13th floor of the Roxxon building. Infiltrating into the party, they retrieve the ledger and narrowly escape the building just before a lethal foe returns with a vengeance to New York City. Whilst their adversary is yet to show their hand, Matt, unaware of this danger, is informed of the imminent start of the case, The People versus Frank Castle. starts next week.
With all the Roxanne mentions in there, I thought we were back in Agent Carter.
Exactly. And a 13th floor of a tall building. Not very often do you find a 13th floor.
Very true, very true. So if this is your first time joining us, the way we cover our episodes is we talk about our top 5 points, some good, some bad, about the episode, have a few notes to discuss, and then as we get to the end, we decide whether we defend the episode or not. Chris, do you want to kick us off with your first point?
I definitely do, because I want to jump straight into this, and some of our fellow listeners who have been with us for a couple of seasons know I'm typically the villain of the group, kind of saying I don't like certain things or I get annoyed.
Or that they're just tropes.
And there's a lot of tropes, yeah, exactly. My God, writers probably look at me and would listen and go, what the heck? How does he know? But it's like, but if any of our listeners are writers or potentially writers for any of these shows, please email feedback and go, yeah, I throw in a trope, find trope number 1, 2, and 3, and I will actually, it'll be minute Easter eggs. But anyway, so for me, I wanted to talk about this one because Regrets Only was perhaps, this one I call it the lightest episodes so far. In that we've had every other episode was kind of very jam filled, kind of chock-a-block of story here, story here, story here. And this we've only had really 2 stories. You literally had the Elektra and Matt's story and then the Castle story. And I was wondering how they were going to kind of tie Frank back in without kind of destroying what they had built in those first 4 episodes. Because it was like they made a character really human at the end of the 4th episode. And if it was just going to be this character, it was like they were just going to go, okay, he's going to go to jail, blah, blah, blah. Having Nelson and Murdoch client being Frank Castle, they've actually gone back and humanized him even further. Like, in other words, like, Karen, she's not a lawyer, so why did they leave her in the room there? But that's a different kind of question. But I think where my brain is with this one is that scene where you had Matt, Karen, and Foggy in the room, in the office, and where Matt wanting to help Frank avoid the death penalty, and then having Matt and Karen talking Foggy into the plan was fantastic. It was like, it was a great way of showing why I couldn't figure out why they would like want to represent Castle. Castle's a mass murderer. Let's be honest here.
37 counts of murder.
Yeah, it was 37, 88 counts of what was it, violence?
Serious assault.
Yeah, I was like in theory he is, but like it was a great way to say, okay, well look, yes he is a murderer, but he doesn't deserve death because Matt knows everything he went through from that big huge monologue at the end of episode 4, and then Karen's doing the whole he had a wife, he had a family kind of pieces, like he's not really a bad guy. Well, he is a bad guy, he's killed so many people, let's be frankly honest about it.
And they are very clear about it on the show. It is definitely one of my points as well, because obviously this is one of the central storylines, you know, for the episode. They do make it absolutely clear that they're not trying to get him off. They're definitely not trying to release him on the streets. The whole point is, and Matt says it very clearly to Brett Mahoney, who's got his little upgrade to Detective Sergeant Mahoney, which is where I got a little bit confused with his name there. But he says it directly to him. He says, if we walk away from this, knowing what we know, if we walk away from this, nobody else is standing up to take the place. Frank Castle is dead. We are basically killing Frank Castle. And Matt's whole theory, his whole point about life, which he talked to Frank Castle about on the roof while dressed as Daredevil, is he doesn't believe that anybody should die. Nobody should die for any, no matter how bad they are, they should be given another chance. So yeah, I really like how they took that into the Matt Murdock side. As he is a lawyer, he is a public defender effectively, so or he is going to be defending Frank Castle here because he can't let anybody die, especially if he knows a way to get them off.
Yes, exactly. And I think that was one of the bits that it took me a second to get into it and kind of understand. It was like, well, I was like, you're good. You're Nelson and Murdoch. You defend the righteous who are being downtrodden. And I was like, well, why are you defending a mass murderer? And then I think, yeah, it slowly came more and more. But then the bit that I think is going to come back to bite it in the ass is the fact that Matt's not defending. It's Foggy and Karen. They're doing all the work.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, the Punisher is an anti-hero. He is supposed to split opinion, as you read a comic or as you should watch, this episode or this show. He is a killer. He has a very different way of going about, to an extent, the same kind of goals that Daredevil has, and he's a killer. I think the thing is, though, it kind of comes to one of my points as well, so I'm going to throw it in. I did feel sorry for Foggy here. I think Matt is there giving out these moral kind of speeches about, well, we don't want to see anyone get killed or whatever, but he works in a legal system which in the US, some states have got, not New York, presumably, given what they're saying in the show, but some states have the death penalty, for better or for worse, for right or for wrong. He knows that. To start having this kind of conversation, I think is strange. I mean, I kind of understood where Foggy was coming from here. He says, this has the potential to put everything on the line. Our safety and Nelson and Murdoch. Not just because of Frank Castle, but because he's being tried by Reyes. There's no mass rush of people coming through the doors following the Grotto thing and following Reyes trying to really destroy this firm, or at least put pressure on it. And I mean, you then also have the personal side of it. Well, he tried to kill you, a shot to the head. You fought with him. He tied you tied in chains, on the top of a roof. But having said that, it stands to Foggy that he is persuaded by, and it stands to Karen and Matt that they persuade him. But I think his loyalty to them and what they want to do sometimes consumes maybe the fact that he might be right. This might have significant consequences for Nelson and Murdoch, and maybe it should, because Frank Castle, the Punisher, isn't a simple superhero, or he's debatable as to whether he's a hero. So, yes, he may have the same aim, but he goes about it through murder and killing, unlike Daredevil. And that's where these characters are so cool and so great, is because they pull you so many different ways as to your rational self goes, well, no, stay away from it. And then you kind of go, your rational self also says, but no, well, he is trying to do the same thing as Daredevil. And then your rational self goes, but he's doing it in a way that, well, you can't accept that, or you wouldn't normally. And so all of a sudden it's all these things. And I think Foggy really summed that up really well in this episode. And I like the fact that right at the end, he's in Matt's apartment, and he just says to him, well, I hope you've got a clear schedule, because so far, you've done nothing, was the subtext. Yeah. And the case is next week. Reyes has brought it right forward, and our client has accepted it. And in fact, our client has been the most unhelpful client, because he's gone from a guilty plea to a not guilty plea. So it was really good. I thought this dynamic between Foggy and Matt was cool. I really felt that Foggy, I was quite a sympathetic character in this episode. And I just wonder whether that tension between Foggy and Matt, which was there in season 1, possibly opens up again.
Completely. And that's one I want to see. I want to see, because at the moment Foggy is like, I know you're jumping around rooftops at night, getting beaten up left, right and centre, and still trying to run this business, and you're not really. No, he hasn't yet, so they cashed the check. There's money in the bank, and he's yet to go, oh, by the way, Foggy, I have a new client, and it's Elektra. And it's like, if he did that, he'd be like, okay, I have a new client, it's all good.
Yeah, but I don't think he wants to tell Foggy who the client is, because I think Foggy knows that who Elektra is and what Elektra did to Matt last time. Not the intricacies of it, but I would presume he knows the relationship side of it. So maybe he doesn't want to tell Foggy that detail. Oh, she's back in town. Oh, and she's the one bankrolling us. Not great. And she's the one pulling you away from doing all your work for the actual firm. Oh, okay. That would probably push them even further away from each other.
One that I just want to kind of to close this point down, and I just want to leave it as a hanging question, is the mystery around Reyes. Why is she attempting to cover everything up? So we know, the only bit that we know is that she's running for mayor. But I think there's more to this story. She's going hell for leather against this. So either she's corrupt, in other words, she's maybe Dogs of Hell, Han, the Yakuza, something, and they're out now to get Castle, or there's something else. She's a kind of a Vanessa Fisk kind of. She's working for her, something like that. I don't know, but there's something there.
Yeah, I know you said it was going to be a hanging question, but that's not what we're here in the podcast. We'll absolutely talk about it. My thoughts on it, there is somebody behind Reyes. There's definitely the way it's being presented is that she's running for mayor, so she wants to leave a very clean trail on this final case of the vigilante of New York being captured and thrown into prison, wants to leave the trail very clean. But then when you couple that into the fact that it was before he became a vigilante that she was involved. So when Frank gets the bullet in the head and is sent to hospital when his kids and wife are killed, there's a do not resuscitate order signed by Reyes at that time before he's actually a vigilante. So there's something much bigger there. Somebody else wants Frank dead or Frank out of the picture. So, you may be right on Vanessa. We may be right on our other speculation that it is something to do with the same crew that were involved in Jessica Jones and in the creation of Nuke in the Jessica Jones series. There may be some connection between those two. But yeah, I totally agree with you that there is something different about Reyes. I don't think it's just as plain as she's running for mayor.
The men in suits, perhaps. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could be.
Yeah.
Like, this was one of my points actually as well. So I might as well get a second one.
Go for it.
Jump right in.
Like, Frank refers to her as the witch. I'll take you down, witch, along with the others. It's like he has an inkling maybe that he knows who she could be working for, or who maybe consciously or unconsciously is abetting, aiding and abetting here.
I also like the fact that he says, "I'll take you down, witch. I'll see you burn," as in burn witch. Which
no,
just,
absolutely.
A nice line from him.
And the other thing, and I'm sure this is just absolute wild speculation on my behalf, but I love the fact that he called her the witch. That speaks of magic. I suddenly wondered whether maybe she wasn't as earthly as she could be. That, you have this notion with Iron Fist of, and it's not, I know it's not, but my mind started wandering of, Madame Gao and all this, that you can have shape shifting and form changing type of people.
Interesting.
I kind of wondered whether she was somehow involved with sort of more the, sort of the Yakuza or the hand or, that side of the equation. I don't think it is at all, but I just thought because he referenced her as a witch, I know that can be metaphorical, it can be literal, and it's more than likely to be absolutely metaphorical.
Or that they may not be able to use the B.
Yeah, but I just kind of thought, wouldn't it be cool if really she is much more involved with sort of the Madame Gao elements and those Eastern elements that are so becoming ever present in New York now. I
love that idea. I love it.
I thought it would be quite cool, but it's not going to be. I'm absolutely sure of that. But I hope she's still legal. I think if she's not that, I do want her to kind of be almost an unwilling party to it, or that, as DA, she signed the DNR, not because she was in absolute cahoots with the people in suits, but that she was being told to by a lawyer, on behalf of maybe the people who had done, however the story had been spun. Maybe she's totally unaware of maybe all these other different threads, or that, her focus is on Office, purely on Office, and she has a singular kind of dislike for this vigilante superhero thing, which, knowing what happens to New York, that's her city as much as it is Matt's. And her way to deal with that is to make sure she puts as many of them behind bars, or, like we discussed in the last episode, that she is absolutely pro-registration and goes after those that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so either of those two, I think, are really cool kind of possibilities for Reyes, but I suspect she's just an out-and-out baddie.
Yeah, but I still definitely think something here is playing in with the Registration Act.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they've set it up too well, and I think, as much as we love speculating, I'm kind of going, I definitely think there's some of these are going to be red herrings.
Yeah.
In that they purposely have put them in to make you go, gotcha. You thought that was that. It's not. But I don't know. I think after a while, after Civil War happens, they've said there's very little fallout, or there will be some insignificant fallout in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and some of the others. But we know Luke, but they've alluded to it, if we want to say that, not said. So I think what will happen is we'll find out that Luke Cage happens after Civil War because he's being pursued by the police, and it turns out that will be probably Registration Act has come into effect. You need to be registered. No, I don't. I'm not a vigilante, or blah, blah, blah. And then that's why he's being chased and put in prison, etc., etc. So I think this is actually the Captain America Winter Soldier again, in that they're putting it down, like, line is drawn here, that this is the end of Phase 3, beginning of Phase 4.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. And obviously, everything that happens in this show took place the day it was released on the 18th of March, so because we watch it every week, that's one of the interesting things, obviously, and I know our listeners really enjoy our speculation, but most of them do know what happens, and I'm presuming there's no huge tie-in to Civil War within the next 7 episodes of the show, because they can't, because the movie won't be out until effectively 2 months after the show was released. So
I say there is, it's just we don't know it yet.
Yeah.
So when she will see Captain America and we'll go, oh, that makes sense now. So these hanging points. But let's jump on to our next point. Derek, have you got one?
I do, and we should have started with it, because it was our big end point last week, was the cliffhanger that we got for 15 seconds, or for us, an entire week, waiting for the fight sequence between Elektra and Daredevil and the visiting Yakuza. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the sequence. I hadn't really watched it in too much depth in the previews. I'd only seen the little clips that were in the trailer. I love this fight sequence. It felt like something absolutely out of a Japanese movie, out of some of my favorite action films, I suppose, that I've seen in years. Effectively, it's short enough. It doesn't overstay its welcome for me, but I like that it opens up with the really confident Yakuza, maybe not, walking into the apartment of Elektra, and Daredevil is hanging out in the shadows, swings down, starts the fight. Elektra comes in from another hidden spot behind, and the two of them go into this great battle where they're swapping fighting partners. And there's a great moment where you have a guy just sitting out the fight, waiting for his moment to pounce. Always really cool. Just felt like a really good martial arts fight sequence, I thought. And it all ends with everybody lying on the floor, Elektra giving a kick off screen, and a guy's body falling to the ground from behind a hidden closet or a hidden cupboard. Loved the scene. Thought it was really well paced. And again, first time we've really seen Elodie Young's fighting style. She's a well-trained martial artist herself, so she did a lot of these scenes herself. And yeah, I thought it was really well paced and really well done. It was a pity we didn't get it at the end of episode 5 where we all wanted it, but it was nice to have it at the start of this episode, since we didn't have any real other big fight sequences throughout the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it's actually one of my points too. Although, I don't know if this was intentional, but if you think about that fight scene and the fight scene on floor 13 in the building were both silhouetted. So in the first one, they were pretty silhouetted against the window in the background of this night, so they were darkened. And then obviously they were behind the glass in the scene where it was just... I just thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, the one on floor 13 really reminded me of the Kill Bill moment, which was in reference to Day of the Dead, I believe, or Dawn of the Dead. the behind glass sequence where it's kind of shadow boxing almost.
Yes.
Between all the characters against each other, where you can't really tell who's winning and who isn't. And then you kind of see, oh, well, okay, well, there's two characters still standing, so it must be Elektra and Matt. Really liked the scene, thought it was really well shot. And again, they're really up in the ante this season. They're really showing, they can do different styles of fight sequences every episode. We did get our huge, fight sequence in episode 2, but they're really showing very different stuff. There's some brawling, there's some karate, there's some weapons, that are used in each fight, but now that you've got 2 martial artists versus 5 martial artists at the start of this episode and towards the end again when they're fighting the Yakuza in the Roxxon building, they're much more martial arts scenes and do remind me of a lot more Japanese and Asian martial arts films. I
think you're right there saying the different styles, because what I liked was, they both jumped from the ceiling in the beginning, and I was like, oh, that's Daredevil for me. Yeah. He's kind of like just hanging there. And I think he did this almost backflippy type thing onto them. I was like, yeah. He's like, because the only thing I feel we haven't seen too much of, which obviously is because it's more comic book than reality, is the actual Daredevil like running up to a pole, swinging around it, and then kicking someone with his 2 feet into the chest or something a bit more acrobatic.
Yeah.
Because he's a bit more of a brawler at the moment. But now that we've slowly introduced the billy clubs, he's using them to great effect.
I know. I like the billy clubs versus nunchucks that we see in one of the scenes here. I thought that was pretty cool seeing the use of nunchucks in anything. Just always gets me a bit giddy, to be honest. Everything's better with ninjas, as we've said before. So these guys from the Yakuza aren't ninjas, but they do battle like trained martial artists in this scene.
No, I loved the strobe light and silhouette fight. I thought Elektra did a mean clothesline. Really seemed to take that guy out, and definitely loved that. I loved the fact that then at the fight at the start, as they all come running in, the Yakuza, that they do say as they go into the building, we'll bring all 10 fingers. And that obviously, sort of references the guy behind the desk on floor 13 with his little samurai with the little box of cigars, so to speak. As unfortunately, poor old Stan Gibson has stood there weeing his pants because, he's just an accountant. And then, of course, the guy behind the desk utters the immortal words, which we are probably come to in another point. So I won't just say them here just yet. Obviously, has implications for maybe why they're bringing fingers, and fingers are a thread here. But I also thought that this might actually be the episode where we think Naboo comes back to life. I actually thought there was going to be an element of that when I realized that it was going to be heavy on the Yakuza. So I thought that was really, really good. I think on the fight at the start in the apartment, I loved how one of the Yakuza was nonchalantly sort of resting up on the counter, sort of probably trying to avoid the fight, thinking that his other buddies were going to actually wipe the floor with these guys and he wouldn't have to do anything, and then has to sort of come into action. I thought that was really just nicely cool, actually.
Absolutely. Like the only discussion that they have before they go into the apartment itself, into Elektra's apartment, is, and when we're done with them, we'll take all 10 of their fingers. It's not, and what you need to do is you need to take out her first, or you need to make sure, or check upstairs, and you go to the left and I'll go to the right. It's not a tactical mission. There's only confidence that they're going to win this battle with this woman who's a hacker. Basically, they didn't expect to be fighting with Elektra Nashios and Daredevil. So I really liked that moment, definitely.
Yeah, Chris, what's your next point?
I'm going to talk about loyalties, because I think this is a nice kind of piece. Okay, well, we have the fact that Matt didn't stick around to question the Punisher. That was the defining point for me, where he's showing that his loyalties are divided.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see that they're going to kind of do that kind of piece around his life as Daredevil versus his life as Matt Murdock. The kind of the curse of any superhero with a secret identity. And it's kind of like, okay, you must choose. Is there a way he can be both? I think that's where Father Lompton is going to come back in So we're gonna, it's always a good story that's gonna come back in and rear its ugly head, because he's got like three different priorities. He's still trying to patrol and take out and look after Hell's Kitchen. He's now helping Elektra chase Roxanne out of Hell's Kitchen. And he's got
the law firm.
The law firm. Oh, actually, he's got 4, and he's now got his new girlfriend.
Yeah, he's got Karen.
So, I'm pretty sure at some point they're going to do an episode around that. And I think, I thought I wasn't going to like it or want to see it, because it's very typical. Like, you've had Batman have to do it. You've had Superman have to do it.
Absolutely.
You've had, like, Peter Parker, when, like, we've seen them all kind of, like, I'm going to go out and tell the truth. And then, so what I actually ultimately think may happen in this season is that he'll get unmasked as Matt Murdock.
Interesting.
And then season 3 would be
at Rikers Island.
Yeah, or kind of them trying to prove that he's not, that Matt Murdock was not actually Daredevil. So you'll have, because don't forget, we've got people establishing, so this is how they could introduce the Iron Fist character.
Yeah, this could be the great Ed Brubaker storyline of him being in prison with Wilson Fisk at Rikers Island. The Iron Fist having to essentially be body double for him. It could be a nice way of introducing Iron Fist before his own standalone as well, that he's the one helping him. Because even I think Matt Murdock doesn't know who the person is who's helping him.
That's right.
It could be a really nice way of linking in there, definitely.
Yeah, because what we're going to have probably then is we'll have this season will finish, then we're going to have Luke Cage, then we'll probably have another season of Jessica Jones.
Yep.
And then another one of Daredevil, and then Iron Fist. So that one of Daredevil is probably, as you said, the Brubaker one, where at the end of that season, it pulls off the mask and it's Finn Jones. And then it's like, oh, so right now you've just all met Finn Jones, see him in his own TV show, blah, blah, blah. Interesting. I just thought it would be, and I know it said it's a trope and it's a standard fallback, but it's actually a good story.
Yeah.
This story of potentially he has to choose to be Daredevil or he has to choose to be Matt Murdock. He can't be both. And he can't be both while still being Marin. Because yes, Karen and Matt. Yeah, Marin.
But it's also his destructive side in itself, in that, he knows he can't be anywhere near Elektra, yet she provides him with something that Karen can't, which is she can go out with him on a Daredevil mission. And like Karen is still unaware of Matt being Daredevil. Okay, Foggy knows, but Elektra does know, and he could have a relationship with her if he didn't find her so abhorrent in the sense of her lust for violence. Yeah. But this episode, despite all his protestations about not wanting to see her and do all that, he still, as you say, that loyalty element where he leaves the hospital and goes at the beck and call of the driver sent. That seems to me to suggest she's got a lot of money in the bank account, which Foggy seems to not really know anything about. Again, a loyalty question of why isn't Matt telling him?
He knows about the money, but he doesn't know about about who's the source of it. Matt hasn't told him who's the source of it because he keeps saying to him, "It's my client, the client that paid us that kind of money, and if she calls, I have to go."
But as a partner, you would still, what I mean totally is that there's way too much being kept from Foggy here by Matt for him to then just suddenly up and leave on a client that he persuaded him to go and defend, to leave that in the hands of him and essentially their assistant, because that's the other thing. Karen is not a lawyer. I found it a bit odd, I have to say, that she would be allowed to be in a room on her own with him, given all the police security and all of that. That seemed a bit strange, that he was able to call the shots. That just would not be allowed.
I'd certainly agree with you that that's probably mostly to do with the fact that it's Foggy, and that he was left with the choice of either pulling Karen out of the room or letting her do what she did. Karen has that kind of hold over Foggy still, that she tells him what she wants and Foggy will let her do it. If it was Matt in that room and Frank had said, I want to talk to you and you alone, Matt would certainly not have let her do that. And they wouldn't be in the situation that they're in. And that's kind of Foggy's point at the end of the episode, isn't it? That he's saying to Matt, because you weren't there and because you left it to me, look what's happened. If you were there, you wouldn't have let Karen talk to him, and Karen talked him into pleading not guilty to these crimes. You know?
Why are you fancy?
But yeah.
I love that expression. He goes, why are you dressed all fancy?
Why are you dressed all fancy? Yeah. And speaking of that whole discussion with Karen and Frank, I think that's a great scene. And Karen's discussion with Frank, adding another extra kind of layer on top of the story that Frank told to Matt back in the cemetery in episode 4. Really enjoyed this because it's kind of gives that extra depth again without showing anything. We're still not getting kind of flashbacks to what happened. We're still getting it being told as a story. And what we find out in here, which I thought was really interesting, is Frank doesn't remember a lot of what happened to him. And he wants Karen to keep reigniting the memories for him. He's only getting glimpses of what had happened to his family and the day that preceded it and what happened, how they met up, what happened afterwards. He's only getting little glimpses of that, and the discussion that Karen's having with him is helping to ignite those memories back in him, probably because of the bullet to the head. Obviously, that's wiped a little bit of his memories. But I do like that there's this connection between the two characters, and I think Deborah Ann Wall's playing a really good part here, where she is absolutely terrified of him and terrified of getting very close to him. And he is very comforting with her. He is justifying some of the things he did. I like that we learned that he was a scout sniper in the army, where he's saying that effectively, yeah, okay, I did kill those people, but they were all bad people. I don't kill good people. And I'm telling you, I am trained well enough not to kill anybody else. There's nobody else that's in the crosshairs that could get killed, because that's my whole job, is to make sure they don't die. I like this justification of Frank Castle's Punisher that he does in the conversation with Karen. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think it speaks to earlier saying, he's a complex anti-hero. He's not a superhero. He's not a hero. He's really complex. It's the means to the end. It is the thing that makes him so complex, because he ultimately uses what he thinks is the language that the mobsters only understand, which is violence.
Yeah.
And that generally is something that most people kind of will shy away from. Yeah. I love that, because it speaks to that. I like the fact that a bit more of his past came out with regards to, the Quantico, saying, one shot, one kill. I love the fact that, he's like, yes, ma'am, kind of, he's just this kind of army politeness comes into his way of speaking with Karen, and thinks that, right now you can ask me the questions that you want to. He's kind of gotten enough.
Yeah.
But still, and what's behind Frank's reasoning, where he promises them one thing and then does the absolute opposite in front. I mean, you just see Foggy's despair. You can see the fright that he gets when he says, I'm pleading not guilty.
Yeah.
Like, all the things that he's warned Karen and Matt about just seem to be like rushing towards him, like in an unstoppable train, and he's like totally like afraid of what's going to happen.
Oh, totally, absolutely. And once again, we mentioned to Chris when we were doing our episode 4 podcast about John Bernthal doing his monologue and how amazing he was in that scene. This scene here with Karen, I think he's equally good in his reactions to what she's saying. I think when we watch the episode, there's one moment where Karen says to him, she's trying to describe the house. He's asking questions about the kitchen, where the dish is put away. He's trying to get a sense of what his family were doing before they went to meet him in the park, is what it seems like. And then Karen offers up information to him without being asked. She says, I was up in your children's bedroom. And there's a really pained expression that John Bernthal gets in his face. And it just twitches across his face for a second. But it's this moment of, I don't want to know this because I didn't ask you about my kids' bedrooms because that's too painful for me. And it's so well acted. It's just a really quick flinch of it. But you can tell, he obviously has kids himself as well. You can tell he's really pulling those kind of details from his past and putting them on the screen. The pain of Frank Castle, the idea that if he has to think back of everything about what his kids were like, he has to live through the fact that they're gone now, you know. Really good, and a really good extra, as you say, extra details behind the Frank Castle character. I love John Bernthal in this season. He's been so good.
Yeah, and I really think he deserves some kind of award for this. And if they don't try and put him up for some type of kind of, I was going to say SAG award or Emmy or something like that, then there's probably a travesty, because yes, it is a comic book. This is a comic book show, but that's on Downton Abbey level, kind of. That is Downton Abbey level.
So maybe it's actually the director. It's not John Bernthal at all. Maybe the director got the performance out. No, definitely John Bernthal.
Yeah, instead of "thank you, ma'am," he did say "thank you, milady."
One bit I was kind of questioning was the Quantico piece. Isn't Quantico FBI?
No, Langley is FBI.
That's right.
So what's Quantico?
I think Quantico
CIA?
is CIA actually, but it's also special ops.
Ah, right. Okay. Because I was curious about, because I was like, it wasn't Army. And I was like, okay, so that was a drop in terms of some part of his past.
Yeah.
That will come back.
Definitely.
So potentially the nuke stories or something like that, more military, potentially CIA.
Yeah.
Like, that does feel like the best fit here is the nuke aspects from Jessica Jones in with the Punisher. And that would be quite a nice little connection.
Wouldn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
Bullet to the brain, people. He's still up and walking with a bullet to the brain.
He's a zombie.
Zombie.
From Walking Dead to Almost Dead.
On that zombie connection, John, do you want to give us your next point?
Yeah, I'm going in a completely different direction now, and that is the two-ass reference from Elektra. You can't mask that ass. Absolutely not, young Charlie Cox. Loved her reference to the fact that she knew Daredevil was him because of his ass. And she goes, "You've been working out, by the way. Thanks for that as well." Like, just, I love this, and it does connect into one of my other points, but I'm just going to keep it on the ass for the moment. I love the fact that she is just being so flippant with Matt. I think he needs that. He needs that in his life. There's too many people that are really putting him on a pedestal, and I like the fact that she doesn't. I like the fact that she knows his strengths, his weaknesses. She knows their history together, and she's clued into his rhythms, and I like that. You really get that sense. And then you've got at the party where she goes, "I only came to the party to get my ass kissed," and you have the guy go, "Well, let me be the first, if it hasn't already been kissed, to kiss your ass." And it's just, she's fun. Like,
certainly,
she's fun. She's raunchy. She's sexy, and she spots a good ass in a scarlet sort of blood red superhero suit.
And when she ripped her, they were hiding in the room, and she rips her dress so she can get more of a kick out. I was like, oh, yeah. I'm sorry, that was just a great show of leg. I understand why they did it, but it was a great show of leg.
It certainly was. Yeah, John, I love the playfulness between these two characters. She's definitely bringing the fun. She really couldn't give a damn what Matt thinks of her, or what anybody else thinks of her for that matter. She's got the money to do whatever the hell she wants, which is the kind of what Matt's trying to throw back in her face, where he's kind of going, "And I want you to get on a flight, get out of the city as quickly as possible, go back to whatever 5-star hotel or spa that you came from." And she's kind of looking at him going, "Well, yeah, that's all great stuff, but I also want to do this." You know, it's kind of, this is why I want to spend my week in between 2 5-star vacations, you know? Really good fun, particularly in this episode. Really enjoyed having her presence along with Matt.
Yeah, big time. I just loved it. So much. Just her playfulness. It was really nice. Chris, what's your next point?
I'm going to bring up the one that came at the end, and we all have in our notes. I'm pretty sure about it. With that one line, "Who said I was Yakuza?"
I know.
I'm like, the hand are in town.
Yeah. The hand has arrived.
I literally wanted to start jazz dancing, like, the hand, here we go.
The jazz hands have arrived.
The jazz hands. Maybe they were the Yakuza thugs or they were thugs, but they were not. Or one and only killer ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yes, if he is what he meant by that, or if this was just another, we're going to bring you over to the next episode by making you think that this is the hand. But I'm hoping this means, okay, yes, this is the hand. They are part of Roxxon, or the Japanese arm of Roxxon, and that means we're going to get our killer ninja action in the next episode.
It was definitely really interesting that it was the guard on the door that shot two of the security guards that brought Stan Gibson, the accountant, into the office. It's the security guards in this central office that shot those two security guards, I guess. And they're there for the announcement that whoever said that we're Yakuza. So not everybody in the building is part of this other group that isn't the Yakuza, I suppose. They're probably part of Roxxon, or they could be Yakuza. I like that this could be a smaller group within the Yakuza group, potentially. It could be a smaller group within Roxxon. It could be everybody that's in that building. I like there's just this little moment of, well, don't know why those guys shot those guys, but they weren't in on the plan. They weren't in to know this idea that they aren't Yakuza members. So, really cool ending to the episode, though.
Absolutely, because I was wondering, what was the strings that they seemed to be wrapping around their thumbs or their fingers?
They were wrapping that because if you do something bad, they take your finger. So they were trying to stop the blood flow on the strings, because he had his box full of fingers, and he took out his little sword. So they assumed that they were going to lose a finger for letting this happen. Well, that's the way I.
Very good.
No, I got that, but I thought it was going to be Stan, and so I actually thought that the bodyguards were going to strangle him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was happening. I thought they were kind of like getting something together. But then you're right; they might just have thought, well, he's going to take our fingers because we were also at fault. So yeah, okay. I just wondered what they were doing.
That makes sense.
Was sort of. And then, obviously, the other guy comes in with the silenced gun and shoots them both in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, the big question is, does Stan, the accountant, survive?
Well, because he has to, because he has the books. So that's a bit, the next part of this is kind of, what the hell was in the coded books that was so bad that it had to be coded, not drugs, human trafficking, weapons, or anything else like that. Like, I went, ooh, black sky, me sir, I know the answer. But like, it's kind of like, okay, so will he stay alive? Will they keep him around? Because he is, in theory, the Hand's accountant.
That's true.
Which is like, good to know that even your most dastardly evil corporation or evil entity must have a good accountant on the books.
Absolutely. If you've got a degree in accounting, you've got many opportunities.
It's the money that talks. We saw that with Stringer Bell from The Wire. Money talks. Follow the trail.
And we also saw that last season in Daredevil as well, with the owl.
Owly.
Leland Owly. Yeah. Really like the scene, and it kind of brings me on to my final point, which is the other one I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, our Daredevil James Bond crossover, effectively. The whole scene of the two of these characters working together and working their magic to retrieve the books from Stan's office, I thought was fantastically done. You know, some great moments in there where Matt uses his blindness and his quick and fast ability to throw a wine glass over someone. Really enjoyed that, to get the key card. Thought that was quite cool. Going in and following Stan into the bathroom and taking out three guys in 2 seconds flat. Absolutely great. And then obviously the investigation as to how they find the key card, and Matt using his abilities again. Definitely seeing a lot more of Matt's abilities throughout this scene, where Elektra's about to go up and approach and pickpocket Stan, and Matt's the one that realizes that there's all eyes in the area are on him. Thought that was really cool. A nice little shimmer to show that he's using his powers effectively. Stuff in the office where he's able to tell there's a secret wall behind the desk. That was very cool. Being able to find out where the switch is to be able to open the door, because you can see there's a break in the electrical activity over beside the little bonsai tree. And then as Elektra twists it, she goes, I did that all myself. Really good, really fun, as I say, Bondian moments. And again, the tux certainly helps with Charlie Cox. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I really like the first safe that Matt opened by putting his fingers up against the door of the safe and him turning the dial. It like using his hand instead of the stethoscope type thing that you would use to hear all those mechanisms moving around. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, really good touch.
For me, I have to say one thing. He used his cane as a billy club.
Yes, he
Oh,
did.
yeah. This was brilliant because it showed that he doesn't always have to be in the suit to be Daredevil. Because it was just like, yeah, you said he stopped her, pulled her back when he heard people coming. They walked slowly down the stairs. As you saw people coming, as people went across from the floor above them. So they were hiding just down to the corner of the stairs. I really loved the bit with the electrical charge and the electrical current you could feel, because I thought that was cool. He was just like waving his hand. It was like, use the force, Luke. I was a bit like, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I really loved the stealth movement around the corridors. Yeah, that was one of the really cool scenes. It did feel like Metal Gear Solid or something, like a computer game as well, where he's able to kind of sense what's coming around the corner, and obviously Elektra can't, but I think she even says, "Good job, Mr. Magoo," to him, named after the one of the blind cartoon character. Again, a nice little niggle from Elektra to Matt there. Yeah, great, really good scenes.
Yeah, the only thing I found slightly weird about that whole part with him and his powers and the James Bond moment was he somehow knew that paper was in the drawer. I was like, hold on, you see World on Fire, particles. I'm like, what? How do you... What? I was like, how does he know that was paper? I was like, okay, can he smell it?
What's the drawer full of books and paper? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that was a stretch, but I'm going with it.
Absolutely.
I'm going with it.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, really good fun scene. Again, really good to see the investigation side of Daredevil and Matt and Elektra working together, definitely. So, John, do you want to give us your last point?
Yeah, it's an extension of what I talked about before. It's just Elektra's goading of Matt. I thought the exchange that they had immediately after the Yakuza fight at the start, and she kind of goes hungry, and you see this sort of huge smile on Elektra's face. Happy times with Matt are back again, where they're fighting and getting excited and maybe aroused by all this physical violence. But I love the exchange. She really does goad him throughout this episode. She calls him, you said not bad, Magoo, when he just pulls her down the side on floor 13, and as two of the guards come around the corner, as she's propositioning Matt to help her infiltrate Roxxon to get this ledger, there's all this sort of bartering and negotiation going on between the two of them, and Matt's kind of going, and then you'll leave my city. And she goes, don't worry, I'm out of your city as and when. And I'm really glad she did that, because Daredevil's ownership of this city is sometimes just grates with me slightly, that it's still being used as the phrase throughout the season. It made sense in season 1, I think. And it still makes sense here, but I think maybe it's being overused a bit, actually. I think he needs to get off his high horse a bit with that. And I like the fact that she goads him on it. So, I love that. I love the fact that she says, of course, no sex. Her condition is no sex. And he's like, Elektra, you've got such a purr kind of thing, and she goes, well, every man has, that I know of, looking straight at him saying, even you, Matt. Like, she was really kind of uncompromising with Matt Murdock here. And I kind of liked that. I liked that she's not deferential to him in any way, because yes, Foggy is to an extent. There's a lot, even though he challenges him as well, there is a deference underlying all of this.
Absolutely.
Hence why he takes on the Punisher job with Karen.
Foggy is absolutely Matt's sidekick and always has been. He knows that. He's always been his wingman. So you're right. He's totally deferential to Matt all the time.
And I love her drunken act on floor 11. with Matt, where, you know, ultimately maybe not proper sex, but she's kind of she's gotten close again to Matt. I love that kind of. I love her sort of mischievousness, actually.
Absolutely.
And I think it played out really well, but I do think it was great that in a jokey way, she kind of calls Matt out on a few things throughout this episode. And I just thought that was really quite good. Even to the extent where she goes, same time tomorrow night, Matt, you know, and you just wonder, is that going to happen? I really hope it does, because again, it might just help with the breakdown of Karen and really just has sort of Matt's world crumbling around him. And I think that will be a really interesting, direction for the season, that those really troubled relationships that Matt Murdock has in the comic books and which really impact on his life. And I think this could be a really nice way of getting into it, I think.
Absolutely. No one can resist a bad girl, really, can they?
No. And especially if it's Electra Nachos. Who doesn't love nachos?
Absolutely. Well, I think we're done with our top 5 points. Anybody have any notes they want to throw out?
I got one. Mr. Hiroshi, who, when Electra said hello to him, I kind of started thinking, and again, this is because it's who said it was Yakuza, blah, blah, blah. He could be the Lord Hiroshi, who was the leader of the faction of the Hand when, in the comic books.
Oh, right.
Electra died, and she turned out to be a Skrull, and it turns, then the Hand went for Daredevil to be its leader, and there was a big faction, and there was a big fight, etc. Could this be Lord Hiroshi, who is actually, this isn't the Hand, this is a fraction of the Hand. The Hand is still gone, but this is him wanting to reclaim Hell's Kitchen as one of their own. Or I'm just wondering, is this actually the same character, or is this just we have a useful name? There we go.
Possibly. That's very interesting. Yeah, nice catch there, Chris. One of my notes from the episode is I loved the discussion. Again, it's in this discussion with Frank Castle, where when Foggy tells him that Reyes hasn't accepted the full terms of their agreement, that he's going to be put in prison. He's going to be in general population, or Gen Pop, which means he's going to be surrounded by criminals. And Frank's response to that is, sounds like a party, which is the first big comic book Punisher that we've heard here. You know, obviously we've seen the actions of the vigilante Punisher in the show and how they're setting up in the Daredevil season, but this really feels like Frank Castle. It feels like him being inside a prison surrounded by criminals is, I suppose, like Rorschach in The Watchmen. I'm not trapped in here with them, they're trapped in here with me, is very much a Punisher type of phrase, you know. This is exactly what we felt like for Frank's reaction to that. I don't mind if I go to prison. I'm going to be able to take out some of those criminals that are still alive. It seems to be the attitude. So I really like that. And one other note from me, we were wrong, Chris, when we discussed the relationship or the startup of Marin. We thought that Foggy knew about it, or I definitely did. I thought that Foggy was giving the all clear and giving the old friendship thumbs up to Matt. No, not really. He kind of seemed pretty surprised that that they were in a relationship in this episode. I think he kind of thought that Matt was walking her home and it's a nice little romantic moment, but he hadn't been told about it afterwards, it feels like. And the reaction from Foggy was great. It was, what? Hold on a second. Is this thing a thing? Yeah?
Yeah. It's definitely not a thing.
Yeah.
I was like, ah.
Poor
Because
Foggy.
it was a poor Foggy moment.
And then absolutely.
And then they left the room as well, not even giving him any further explanation. Marin leaves the room and goes off for another snog.
Yeah, that was my only note here, was just the woe moment. You know, did this really happen from Foggy? And like you said, Chris, it's just more like, is he fine with this relationship? Maybe he's not. Maybe with Matt going off now to this other client who's got all the money, he's been left with the client that's got no money and is probably going to destroy the practice and the legal firm. Then maybe this is all starting to build up where there's going to be a bit of a big blowout between the two. And again, I think it really speaks back to the comics of Matt's own destructive personality, with his friends and accomplices in, so to speak, that this will be kind of quite good. Cause it seemed like oh, okay, this is happening, and it seemed a strange surprise to him, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But you did see them holding hands going into Frank Castle's hospital room as well.
But I think also to that, I think Karen was also holding Matt's arm all the way going into the hospital the whole time. So maybe just that little slip might not have been as big a thing as when two of your friends or the two other coworkers you have in an office just make a kiss goodbye right in front of you. Not something you generally see from your coworkers if you didn't know they were going out,
That's true.
But
I think the only note I've got as well then is I love the cuffs, the tape around the bed, and just that empty room of Frank Castle's hospital room. I thought it was a real nicely set up scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that Frank Castle calls out, "You protect shitbags."
yeah,
That's in inverted commas. And then ultimately is being protected by them.
absolutely.
It's a nice little call out, obviously to Grotto. Who was one of his intended victims and was a victim of his.
Yeah.
So really, that was just a nice little scene, I thought, as well.
Totally agree. And once again, it's the power of the storytelling in this show is really about everybody has their own motivation, and they do show at every turn, when they get the opportunity, what the motivation of people are. So there's not as many supporting actors in this show, than you would get in a lot of other shows. Everybody's shown why they feel that they're doing things the right way. And again, Frank's really calling out the fact that, yeah, okay, you think you're the greatest defender in all of Hell's Kitchen history. You think you're a great lawyer, dealing with the cases that other people don't want to take, but he killed people. He shot people just like I did. And you think I'm the bad guy, but you're getting people off effectively. Not Grotto, unfortunately. Yeah. And on that note, Chris, do you defend this episode of Daredevil Season 2, Episode 6, Regrets Only?
I do. Even though it was a slower but from kind of the fast breakneck speed that we've been used to. This was kind of one of our lull episodes, but they did something very right in the season where this lull episode, they still gave us action. They gave us two fight scenes. They gave us this break-in. They advanced the plot in a number of different cases, while still it was a slow chug. And it was good. So for every question they closed for me in that, how was Punisher and Frank Castle going to be brought back in? They opened a new one, which is, why is Reyes going after him so badly, etc. Well, Roxanne and the Yakuza. No, not the Yakuza. It could be the Hand, blah, blah, blah. So they're doing it very well in that, okay, this is the question we have. Let's answer that. Oh, but wait, from that one question, one answer, you get two different questions coming out of it. So I thought it was really good. One of my favorite episodes? No. One of the best of the season? No. But it was good. It was They fixed the problems I had with a lot of these filler episodes where they didn't give you enough to go on. This was like, okay, this is going to be a slow episode, and you knew it straight out, and this was how they did it.
Excellent.
So yes, I defend.
Excellent.
So John, do you defend this episode?
I do defend this episode of Daredevil. I would give it 3.5 fingers, Yakuza chopped off fingers out of 5. Certainly not the Cadbury variety. And I really liked it. I liked the continued sort of reining in on the pace. I like the exploration of the relationships here, again, between Elektra and Matt, but also with Foggy and Matt and Karen's sort of interview with Frank Castle. They were all kind of nice little set pieces, almost of these character developments, which I really quite liked. Plus you had the fight at the start, you had the break in to give that bit of action that I think Chris is right. You kind of do need this in a show that sets itself as being such a visceral, raw and violent, show, which also, and certainly prides itself from certainly season 1, and we've seen it already in season 2, on some really amazingly good set fight scenes.
Absolutely.
I think you need to have that aspect there in the background. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be as brash as those massive set pieces, but it's good that they're still there, even in some of these slower episodes, because it helps with the pacing change, because there's still a bit of rush in it. It's not just completely slowed down. I think as well, Elektra is such a hyper-active, energetic character that even though it is a slowdown of pace, she just brings excitement to the role. I absolutely loved her in the last 2 episodes. I love her relationship with Matt. I love how it's so tense, so sort of argumentative, yet they do seem to still be there together. There seems to be that bond that won't quite unstick between the two of them, despite what's happened. And again, you had that here. And I really, really liked it. Really good episode from that point of view for me. And that's why I give it 3.5, Yakuza chopped off fingers out of 5. On that note, Derek, do you defend this episode of Daredevil?
I do defend this episode. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved Karen and Frank Castle together in a room. I thought they were really good scene. Love John Bernthal in that scene specifically. Again, to your point, John, Elodie Young is knocking it out of the park as Elektra. Her playfulness, the action sequence at the start that we were waiting so long for, unlike most of our listeners, I'm sure. I think it paid off totally, and the playfulness all the way throughout the episode where Matt's trying to calm her down, trying to rein her in, but she is not for taming. Thought that was great. I do agree with you about Foggy. I do feel that he is getting a bit of a bum's rush from everybody around him. He's being told what to do by a lot of people, so he is really kind of being pushed to the side. But I think it's going to come back. And the one thing about this episode that makes me really excited is we are going to get a courtroom scene. It's coming. We're going to be going back to court with Matt Murdock. Yes, lawyer by day, defender by night, and finally we're going to see him in a courtroom. That's quite cool. Looking forward to it. So yes, I do defend this episode.
Cool. One thing I should add as well is that, I hope that the consequences of some of these little interrelationship tensions that are building up, and I don't necessarily mean the obvious one between Elektra and Matt, although obviously there has to be a consequence there, but it's also, I want to see Karen see Elektra and find out about Elektra for the first time. And the same with Foggy, that they really get to suddenly see that it's not like he's saving people, which is probably what Foggy thinks he's doing in a lot of cases, that he's with Elektra, who maybe he knows something about her already.
Absolutely.
So some of these sort of tensions that maybe or secrets that are starting to build up between these characters, I really hope that they are exposed. And I hope they're done so in a really meaningful way, actually. Because that would be the slight letdown from this episode. And the last one is that this time and effort and pacing that's been gone into exposing all this really doesn't get fulfilled in a meaningful way.
Well, let's hope it does. Yeah, definitely. I think that's it for this episode of Defenders TV Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, listeners. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast by going to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes if you want to get it over on iTunes, or you can subscribe to us on any good or evil podcast catcher if you're an Android listener by just searching for Defenders TV Podcast, or searching for Daredevil, or searching for Agent Carter, or searching for Jessica Jones. Our podcast will pop up once you search for any of those words, to be honest. So search for us, subscribe to us, leave us a review if you're in an area that can leave us a review. And of course, you can also send us feedback on any of the episodes that we've covered so far, any of the movies that we're going to be covering, just by emailing us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or come on over and join the group on Facebook. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/groups/defenderstvpodcast, click join, and one of us will approve you, and you can come in and have a chat with us about the podcast or any of the episodes. Overall, thanks very much for joining us for this episode of Defenders TV Podcast. We'll be back with you for episode 7 of Daredevil next week, which is Semper Fidelis, or Semper Fi.
Semper Fi!
Semper Fi!
Yep, no, guys, thank you so much for listening in. Of course, because I'm such a gentleman, even though I was controlling this podcast, I let Mother Derek feel that he was in control by giving him the ending. So from all of us here at Defenders TV Podcast, we'll see you next week.
Yep, see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye. It's been a while since I put any outtakes in the podcast. Just thought these ones were a bit of fun to share with you. Talk to you again next week. Bye.
I hasten to add, no relation of Stephen... Oh, no. The Knight. Why is it a no?
Drew Goddard.
Drew Goddard, yeah. I hasten to add... I hasten to add, no relation of Drew Goddard.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some wild herrings in here that we can, because we know they've all but said that there
Red
definitely
herrings.
is tie-ins.
Is that where you're
But I love wild herring as well.
Wild herring is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's really tasty.
Red mullet's great as well.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.